Hi, and welcome back to another edition of Inside Great Lakes Sailing. My name is Greg Normand, your host. We're back with you just before Memorial Day. We've been gone for probably the last 6 or 7 weeks. We've been involved in the collegiate and high school lacrosse world and keeping pretty busy with broadcasts and coaching. And it's time to get back to the water. Our season is almost over, and hopefully we'll be back with our boat in the water by the end of the week, and we'll see what happens there. But we wanted to get back on YouTube and kind of talk about sailing and what's coming up. You see a lot of boats, certainly in a lot of the local marinas and harbors, yacht clubs, and hopefully we'll get a chance to get out on Lake St. Clair and do some sailing. Up front with us this week, we're going to get a chance to talk to Liam Walz and Abie Griggs from Cleveland, a couple of young men that are part of the Olympics development team on a 49er. We're going to talk a little bit about the boat, their campaign, the ability to see how much U.S. sailing can provide, and maybe a little bit of a fundraiser for those two. It's pretty expensive to campaign a boat in Europe, and they're asking for some help. We're going to talk a little bit about their Olympic campaign for 2024 and 2028. So that'll be a fun conversation. I think you'll enjoy that. We then had a chance to spend some time with Scott Herman, who's involved with Spectrum Sailing, and we interviewed Scott last year. Scott started a free program for autistic children, and he's gone from 2 events or 3 events all the way up to 8 events, and there's some stops here in the Midwest. There'll be a stop at North Cape Yacht Club later next month, and he's also going to stop in Holland and Chicago. So that's something that you should really check out. We wanted to kind of keep tabs on him. The program has grown exponentially. He's got a number of national sponsors and a really good program. And what's really amazing is that they do a lottery for their camps. It's a 3-day camp. And there's no charge to the students because of the kind of fundraising Scott's been involved with, and it's almost become almost a full-time job for him. So we'll talk to Scott a little bit, and I think that'll be insightful. Wanted to also mention some condolences to the Melgus family. I'm wearing the shirt, as you can see. Buddy passed this past week, one of the great Olympic sailors of all time, and certainly one of the great boat builders, and just a real good guy from Minnesota. We've had a chance to interview both Harry and Harry Jr. Last year on the show. Both of them were here in town for the Melgus 24 races here at Crescent Sail Yacht Club, and Buddy will be truly missed. I did have a chance to talk to him about a year and a half ago for about 15 seconds on a Zoom call, and it was just a salutary hello. But from everything I've heard, he's certainly a first-class guy, and we wish the family the best possible outcome, and certainly condolences to a great man. So we want to get on with the show. So up next is Liam and Abie Griggs, and talk a little bit about their Olympic campaign for 2024. And if you have time, take a look at the end of the interview. We're going to leave an address for you for donations if you're interested. And we'll be back in a second. Welcome back to Inside Great Lakes Sailing. We're talking with Liam Walz and Abie Griggs, who are partnering up to try to make themselves Olympians for 2024 in Paris. And you're doing it on a rather unique boat. And what we're going to talk about is twofold: the boat, the campaign, but more importantly, it takes money to raise to be able to go out and sail race. So talk a little bit about your dream and how you guys met. And Liam, let's start with you.
Yeah, so well, the dream is the Olympics and in the 49er. Where our sights are primarily set on Los Angeles 2028, but we're also campaigning for Paris 2024 in the meantime. Abie and I actually met a few years ago at the 2020 North Americans in Bristol, Rhode Island. We were both sailing with different people at the time. And about a year later, we both met just on a whim at a regatta, and we were in a similar situation where we were both looking for someone else to sail with, and it worked out. It was been sailing for a year now, and it's been fantastic.
Abie, we know Liam from being around Crescent and being around Lake St. Clair. Obviously, you're an Edgewater guy from Cleveland.
Yeah.
And they've produced some unbelievable sailors down there. And
Yeah.
You're a long line of those. You're a long line of those guys.
Yeah, and that's where I grew up. That's where my grandfather sailed his whole life, and yeah, it's a great place. It's where I first put the 49er in the water. It was July of 2017, and yeah, I spent the first couple of summers while I was still finishing up college, sailing there in my off seasons. during breaks, over winter break, we went down to Florida a couple of times, and I was sailing with another Cleveland guy, Ian Moran, at the time. And after we stopped sailing together, and after I graduated college, I was looking for someone else to sail with, and it worked out really well. Liam was in the same position with his brother finishing up school, and it just worked out perfectly, and we've now been sailing together for a little over the year. I've been sailing the 49er full time for about 2.5, 3 years. And in total, I've got about 5 years of experience in the boat. So it's a great boat. It's super rewarding, super fast paced. And, it's immediately, when you do the right thing, you're instantly going 2 knots faster. And the more you do it, the more fun it gets, the easier it gets to sail, and the more rewarding it is.
Should point out that the 49er is a relatively new boat to the Olympic experience, having been introduced in 2000 in Australia, in Sydney. So it's not one of those boats that has a lot of notoriety because of its short term and on the international level. From an Olympic perspective, it was designed. It's kind of a unique design. It looks like a big albatross, at least to me it does.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those boats that goes crazy. Why don't you see more of those kind of boats in, let's say, yacht clubs or junior sailing centers, just because of the uniqueness of how to sail it?
Yeah, I think it's a unique boat that requires a certain set of skills and physical fitness, and the barrier for entry is pretty high, along with cost too. So I think just both of those things stacked up, it makes the boat a little less accessible for most people.
Yeah. And I think a lot of junior sailing pathways is kind of centered around Club 420 or the Laser, which are pretty easy to jump right into. And the pathway boat for the 49er, the 29er, is pretty tricky itself. So a lot of kids are kind of pushed more towards the Club 420 or the Laser. And, that was my experience growing up in junior sailing too. In Edgewater, we didn't really have a circuit where we could go race 29ers like they might have sort of in Florida or California. So it was just kind of a leap of faith to get into the class, and it definitely took a long time for us to figure out. But as we sort of got the thing upright and got our feet underneath us, it started to get a lot easier and started to get a lot more fun.
What makes you guys good partners?
Yeah, I think, just, being able to work well together is a lot about, patience and, understanding each other's skill set and respecting what each other's roles are in the boat. Knowing what Liam wants as a skipper and him knowing what I'm looking for as a crew, and also understanding that we're both, playing very important roles in the boat and can kind of balance each other's, roles out and balance each other's energy a little bit too.
Let me ask you a better question. That's a great public relations answer, and I understand that. I don't mean that in the wrong way. But if you're that much, you spend that much time training, you spend that much time in a boat together, there's got to be something that hooks you together to enjoy each other, because you can't spend that much time with somebody that isn't, on the same page, so to speak. So, Liam, let me ask the question to you, and then I'll come back to AB a little bit. What is it you like about AB as a sailor, and what is it that makes you a good crew?
Well, I like that he's honest with me. I think I have and best, I have a tendency to be a little overly optimistic, maybe a little too, I don't know, positive a lot of the times. And sometimes I need someone to ground me a bit. And AB is perfect for that. He kind of paints the picture like it is. So I think in trainings and whether it's in the fitness center or on the water, he's there to keep me focused. And if I think something was good, he might break it down a little bit and say, well, we can look at this aspect of it and it wasn't too great. So I really appreciate the honesty.
Yeah. And it's a long road ahead of us to get to where we want to go. So I definitely, I think, the optimism is pretty refreshing for me, you know. So it's nice. You can get kind of too focused on the journey a little bit, and you know where we are right now, and it's nice to see, you know, the little progress we've made along the way and highlight, like, you know, we could do this better, but you know, this one thing since the time that we first started sailing together, our maneuvers or our tacks or our drives have gotten, you know, twice as good, you know, twice as fast.
Talk a little bit about the sort of the specificity of how difficult that boat is to sail, because it's one of those, it's 207 pounds, I think, in terms of hull weight.
Mm-hmm.
The two of you together have to weigh more than 200 pounds. So you actually weigh more than the boat. So
Yeah.
when you've got the kind of sail capacity that those boats have, you better be, like you said, you have a technical set of skills you have to really understand. So I'm assuming, like any of those smaller boats, they're pretty easy to flip in certain conditions if you're not on top of your game.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, we're looking at like anywhere from like 350 to 360 pounds crew weight combined between the two of us. A whole lot of sail area. Thing's got a ton of horsepower, and it's very temperamental. So very tippy, easy to flip the thing over going downwind, to stick the bow into a wrong wave and pitch pull the thing, or even just, you know, sitting straight at the start line. You know, there's never a moment where you can, you know, kind of turn your brain off and switch off and sit down even and, you know, grab a drink of water. You've always got to be focused and locked in on what the boat is doing, you know, the flow across the foils, how much the sails are loaded up, all that. You got to constantly be checking in with those things.
All right, so you're in the middle of a campaign to try to raise some money to campaign the boat in both North America and Europe. There's been a shakeup in the last 60 days or so at U.S. Sailing and certainly the Olympic program. Paul Caird, who was actually on our show about 6 months ago, stepped down, and we actually had a chance about 2 months ago to have a conversation with Alan Oldfield, who's the new CEO of U.S. Sailing, and it's really going through a transition. But let me start with this question. You're going to campaign as an Olympian. I know on the ski side what was provided for skiers. What does U.S. Sailing provide you to be an Olympic hopeful? What do they provide you with in terms of do they provide anything financially or otherwise?
Yes.
So from our position, we're on the ODP team. That's Olympic Development Program. In our position, they typically help out with coaching, which is a huge cost for any campaign. And they'll help out with some logistics, such as organizing training camps, or they can get multiple boats together. And we've definitely reaped a lot of those benefits over the last year. They've really helped us out with covering coaching costs and throwing together good training camps for all the ODP boats to group together for.
Yeah, coaching is a massive expense for us, and you know, it's really great. I mean, in our experience, if we can put together the camps, or if they organize the camps, we get 3 or 4 boats together, and they can provide a coach for us. We end up learning a ton. So we work some really accomplished sailors as coaches, so it's really great.
Do you look for good coaches or guys that sailed that coach? And my point to that is that there's a lot of sailors who are great, but don't necessarily translate being good coaches. What do you look for in that coach that might be, just because the guy's got an Olympic medal doesn't necessarily mean that he can coach?
A lot of the coaches we work with haven't actually been to the Olympics, honestly. They're career coaches. They're fantastic at what they do, and it really shows. I mean, there's definitely a difference between, you know, knowing the boat and knowing how to coach the boat. And I think at this level, a lot of people are people who know how to coach.
Okay.
Yeah,
That
a
makes
good
sense.
coach definitely got to have a lot of things. You know, they got to be honest. They got to, you know, show the full picture for you, but there's still time that, you know, they got to support you as well, and you know, give good balance of, you know, reinforcing positive things when they see you improving, like, is, you know, really reassuring. Especially, like I mentioned, I mean, it's a long journey, but also, you know, letting you know where you are and how you can improve is huge.
Video is an integral part of every sport. I'm assuming that drones and that kind of process, you get to see yourself, and with the kind of programs that are available with sort of CAD-like services, I think of some of the programs we use for lacrosse, you can break down almost any specific aspect of a mechanical part of the way it works. So I'm sail shape for you guys, those kinds of things. How much do you work with video? Quite a bit.
Quite a bit. Yeah, it's pretty helpful for me as the skipper. I imagine it's helpful for AB as well. But when I'm trying to learn turn rates or where to place my weight in certain conditions, whether it's flat or wavy, windy or not wavy, it's pretty helpful when you might have a frustrating day, you can't figure out what's going wrong, and then you get that out of boat shot, and you're like, oh, well, I wasn't in the right spot at any point during the day.
Yeah, it's super important for your position in the boat, but as well just having that view of the leach profile from behind the sail. Like that perspective is so valuable and is really easy to capture from a coach boat or just get on video. And seeing how that changes as you manipulate the controls on the boat, all that is very, very valuable. So it's definitely a massive part of what we do.
How many teams go for 49ers? How many teams? Because we were talking earlier about 49er and then 49er FX, and obviously the FX is the women's rig, a little bit different than what the men's rig is. How many teams for 49er make the Olympics? And then the follow-up question is, how many teams are sort of qualifying for whatever spots might be available?
So there's 20 spots for the men's 49er in the Olympics, and there's another 20 spots for the FX.
So one per country, two per country?
One per country, yeah.
Okay.
One per country in each event. So one for the FX, one for the men's 49er. So
And how many teams like you are competing for that one spot to make the Olympic team?
at the moment there's 3 on the US sailing team, and there's about 6 ODP boats similar to us. So
something under a dozen, something in that
Yeah.
ballpark that are competing for one. So
Yeah.
obviously the numbers at this point make it a bit of an uphill slide. Is that fair to say?
Oh yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
What's the difference right now between you and the guy that you think might make it?
I think time in the boat can't be emphasized enough. The top guys, the 3 guys on the US sailing team have spent 5 or 6 years sailing the boat, some of them more. And they're just now getting ready for their first Olympic Games in Paris. So I think with our time frame, we're looking at a pretty good track record going towards Los Angeles. We'll have about 6 years in the boat by the time that event rolls around. So I think that'll put us in a similar position that they're in now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Time spent racing at a high level, at these European events, competing in these world championships, European championships over a span of like at least, a solid 4 years, some more like 6 to 6+ years. And then also receiving consistent coaching over that time frame, working with same coach the whole time, someone that they can build a relationship and, they can see their strong suits and see how they race the boat and develop over that course.
The component of experience is something you can't replace, is what you're really kind of saying.
Definitely.
One of those things that goes. So you're going to campaign this boat for 2028. If 24 comes along and something is great, what's it cost you to campaign the boat for a year? And what are you setting your sights on financially for folks that are interested in helping?
Yeah, I'd say roughly, on the low end, you're looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of 60,000 for a year of sailing. That's with competing in maybe 1 or 2 international events in Europe, and the cost of equipment, cost of housing, coaching fees, like we mentioned, are a big expense too, and then general cost of living. And then when you look at some of the higher end, some of the high level teams that are competing in, every race on the European continent, doing, 5 to 10 events a year, you're looking at closer to even $200,000. So it really varies based off of, who your coach is, how much they charge, the level of support you get from your national sailing organizations, what expenses they're covering and that sort of thing.
So does $100,000 seem like a good number in terms of numbers of dollars? And so my question, if you use that sort of a number, if that's the ballpark,
Mhm.
what does US provide? What do you have to raise? And then more importantly, so that you're not driving the 1955 Toyota, how do you survive when you're trying to make this sale? Because it obviously is a struggle uphill because money is opportunity. And without the opportunity, it's hard to, sort of chase the dream because you can't live on spam, as it were. Well, you could, but it doesn't. You understand my point?
Oh
It's an
yeah.
expensive sport. And then I guess the
Mhm.
follow up: are we doing enough for our Olympic teams? And that's a really large question. But how
Mhm.
much money do you actually guys have to raise, and what do you get from the national program?
Yeah, so for the next 6 to 8 months, the events that we're looking at and racing, hopefully racing the European Championships and competing in the trials, we're looking at raising someone in the neighborhood of $30,000 to $40,000 for that. And the support that we get from through the ODP team is mostly centered around coaching. So we have gained a lot of valuable experience from that, but that's not in a dollar amount. So the support that they give out to the U.S. sailing team members, they do receive funding through that. I think it's I don't know all the fine print, but I think it's tier two athletes are somewhere in the neighborhood of $15,000, and tier one athletes are somewhere in the neighborhood of $30,000, and they take care of a lot of their accommodation and expenses on top of that. But through the
So as a
ODP
team,
program, yeah, we're just supported with coaching centered around these camps and regattas domestically and some internationally, but we still do a lot of fundraising, and I know the sailing team members still do a lot of fundraising through different organizations too.
as a team, are you guys required to come up with an LLC? I mean, if somebody gives you dollars, does there have to be a formal process where you keep track of those kinds of things so that it's not going into a large? If somebody wants to give you money, how do they know that it's being used for sail racing? I think that's in a charitable world that we are now. That's something I think people should know.
A
Mm-hmm.
lot of teams, including us, go through 501c3s, usually sailing related 501c3s. We go through the Youth Nautical Education Foundation,
Okay.
YNEF. Others go through Windmark or St. Francis Sailing. Yeah, there's quite a few out there, but everyone pretty much goes through a 501c3.
What's the sacrifices you have to make individually to follow this dream?
That's definitely a big one. It's a lot of time on the road. You're going from place to place, doing a lot of traveling, and time away from family, time away from friends. It can be tough, but I mean, it's also you know super rewarding boat, like I mentioned, and the lifestyle is definitely unique, but it's a lot of fun and it's a great experience, definitely.
When there's no major financial reward at the end of this sport project that you're working on, if
Mhm.
this were football or basketball, or probably even to some extent ski racing, there'd be some financial rewards. You could win a gold medal. If you talk to Anna
Mhm.
Tunnicliffe, she would be the first to tell you that that medal's worth the exact dollar of gold that it's worth at selling it at the pawn shop. Doesn't mean that it wasn't a great award. It was.
Mhm.
In our sport, there's nobody at the end of that road willing to hand you a big contract. So this really is an endeavor of love for both of you guys. Is that fair?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to be self-motivated. There's not a lot of external motivation like that, and you got to really love what you do every day. But I mean, when you do, you know, it's a great day every time you're able to get the boat out on the water.
Somebody might say you're both nuts, but that's the part of the dream that
Probably.
you're trying to chase.
Yeah.
And you're smiling because I'm fairly in the ballpark with that save. If you love a
Definitely.
dream, there's nothing can get in the way, and I understand that. So I want to help you guys. How do I do that? And give me a little bit of background. So if somebody's watching this, we'll put up the information at the end of this interview, so that if somebody's interested in helping out, who can they write a check to for as much as they can write a check for, and who do they send it to?
Yeah, that's a great question. So you can write a check to the Youth Nautical Education Foundation. Um, and to specify it's for our campaign, you can either say this is for Youth Nautical Education Foundation Walz Griggs, or in the memo slot, you can put our name, either or works. And all donations are tax deductible, since it's through a 501c3.
And then the address, we can get that to you too, that you can mail those into the YNEF Foundation, the Walz Griggs campaign.
Okay. And those are tax deductible that they can get back from that foundation if somebody does donate. Am I correct?
Yes.
So they'll get the proper paperwork if somebody donates whatever the numbers are. Other than a big bag of cash you can drop off either Edgewood or Crescent, one of those things, put to somebody's ding. Hopefully everybody will spend some time. Is 24 realistic, or is it really 28 that you're looking at?
I would say 28. 24 is kind of, we're campaigning now, so sights are set on it, just as they would be if or any other games. But I would say we both went into this campaign with the real sights set on 2028.
Well, good. Well, listen, I appreciate both the opportunity to talk to both you guys. We will try to get the message out and raise a couple of dollars. Liam, this is the second time we've had this conversation. Obviously, the dream continues. We talked to you and your brother probably 2 years ago when we started this program. So we can only wish you the best. Western Lake Erie is also a place where there's a lot of good sailors, man. There's a lot of guys that come out of that end of the world. So, and there's a lot of Olympians around here that you guys have that you know, and you touch elbows with. So, hopefully the experience and the opportunities for both you guys will be outstanding this couple of years. Let's hope we can raise some money for you.
Thank you. Yeah. Appreciate you having us on. Thank you.
I want to thank Liam Walz and Abie Griggs for talking to us a little bit about the Olympic campaign. We have, I think, some really good insight into how that all works. We had on earlier Paul Kayard, who was on the show, who was at the time head of the Olympic sailing for U.S. Sailing, and he stepped down recently. And we also had a chance to talk to U.S. Sailing CEO Alan Osfield. And right now, it's kind of going in different directions. Hopefully, they'll get it solidified, and maybe the national team will provide more than maybe what they've provided in the past, and we'll all see that. But we'll take some time for that. Up next is Scott Herman, and Scott's going to talk a little bit about the autistic sailors and all the folks, and including his own son, and give you some insight to some upcoming camps around the Great Lakes. So we'll be back in a second. Welcome back. We're talking with an old favorite, Scott Herman. We had a chance to talk to Scott last year about Spectrum Sailing, which is a very interesting program for kids with autism who want to get out on the water. And Scott, you guys have grown so much, so exponentially large in a relatively short period. Three things. We're going to talk about the entire season, but where are you? You were last week. You had one down in Florida, I believe.
So far this year, we've been in Jacksonville and in New Orleans.
Okay.
We have a little bit of a break here in May, and then our upcoming camps, we're heading up to the Great Lakes. We'll be in Toledo and Chicago in June. Those are our next two camps.
Talk briefly on how this got started.
My son Daniel is autistic. He's actually, his birthday is this week. He's going to turn 15. When we moved back to Charleston from Chicago 6 years ago, I tried to get him into a sailing program, and none of the local clubs would take a child like Daniel. And so we started just a 1-week program here locally. The demand was so high, and it was such a success over the last 3 or 4 years that we ran that program. Last year, we decided to take the program across the country. So last year, we traveled to, we were here in Charleston. We also were in Chicago and Sarasota last year. And then this year, we'll be in 8 cities. So over 160 kids will have a chance to attend our sailing camps across the country this year. And all of our camps, just like last year, all of our camps are still free. So every kid gets a chance to come to camp.
Professionally, and I want to ask a couple of professional questions, but what have you in your short time of this 2-year program noticed that sailing helps with kids with autism? What's the connection?
Right. Well, I think, first of all, I mean, all of us are drawn to this sport because, it's pretty peaceful. It's calming. We like to be on the water. But what I think I've kind of uncovered as I've had now, well over 100 kids through the program, I think it really builds their self-esteem. It makes them feel valued. It makes them feel part of the team. Some of these other therapies that are great for kids, equestrian's been around a long time and things like that are great, but they're really an individual activity. Whereas with sailing, we put at least 3 kids on each boat, and they work together as a team. Somebody's is manning the jib, somebody's driving, somebody's trimming the main, and they have to work together to make the boat go. And I think that really is the biggest takeaway from the sailing piece. It's not just giving them a chance to sail and getting them on the water, but it really helps them build their self-esteem and their confidence.
When you set your curriculum up, when we talked to you last year, you had obviously worked with professionals who understand and deal with autistic kids. Did you kind of adhere to what their suggestions were, in terms of your curriculum?
Yeah, we've really we partnered with the Medical University of South Carolina here, and we work with their autism team. We've actually made some changes to our curriculum. We also had a student come down from Queen's College in Canada. She's actually studying STEM science as well as special ed. And she came down and did a curriculum sort of enhancement program for us and took a look at how we ran our camp in Jacksonville, and then gave us some pointers and ways that we could maybe better engage with the kids. We also partner with Brendan Sailing, who has a neurodiversity sort of training method and ways to work with kids with different learning styles. And so they actually come to all of our camps. All the instructors that work at any of our camps have an opportunity to go through that training for free as well. So we've brought in some experts around the country and actually out of the country to make sure that we're really delivering quality sailing instruction, but also making sure that the kids really have the best chance to learn.
I asked the question because obviously you have 15 years experience in your own household of dealing with a son in that situation. But if I'm a parent with an autistic child in Holland, Michigan, and we'll talk about coming to Holland in a couple seconds, but I think a lot of times programs are done out of the spirit of somebody's heart and not necessarily, structured in a way that might help professionally. And so as you're judging, so that's the reason I'm asking the question. I knew you were very involved in the curriculum with the pros, and this is. Are you surprised how fast this has grown?
I am, but I'm also not, because I know as a parent how little the opportunities like this exist for these kids. So it doesn't shock me that there's a massive demand from the family side, and it also doesn't really surprise me that there's such interest from clubs, right? I think most sailors want to give back. Most sailors want to get as many people on the water as possible. And once they find out that there's a program that we can come in and sort of turnkey help their club, invite and include a population that isn't being serviced right now, usually clubs are pretty open to have that happen.
So let me get specific. Jacksonville, New Orleans, you've already had. March, Jacksonville, you were at April 4th, 5th, and 6th in New Orleans. Mm-hmm. Toledo coming up on the 13th to the 15th. Chicago, Park City, and I got a question for that one. Holland on the 19th, 20th, 21st of August, and then you finish up in Sarasota in September. How does Park City end up? Because where's the body of water for Park City?
So it's Jordanelle is it's like a gorge, and all that snow melt that they have goes there. So it seems like everyone I've worked with so far in Park City, skiing seems to be their first passion, but then in the summer they all switch to sailing, it appears. So Sail Park City looks to be an amazing facility. I haven't been out there yet. I'm pretty excited. There's a lot of inclusion skiing that already exists out there, and those people seem to be really excited to bring the same type of thing to their sailing in the summer. So
I'm involved in the U.S. ski program, and I'm out in Park City a ton, and I understand all kinds of people with Salt Lake. But having spent probably 50 nights in the last 3 or 4 years in Park City, I don't know what you're talking about, which is amazing.
It's in a state park. I think it's called Jordanelle State Park.
Yeah. No, I'm sure it's a wonderful facility. The Wasatch Canyon is unbelievably beautiful, and there's a lot of activity for kids that go through it.
They've told me that this will be a somewhat of a banner year, because they got so much snow that most likely when we're when we're sailing in July, that they'll still have snow-capped mountains in the background. They said it's going to be pretty cool. So.
Well, the other part too is such a beautiful place beyond just nothing against Holland or Sarasota or Toledo, but Park City, you're on the lake, you're on the water, and you're looking at mountains. That's a pretty cool combination.
I'm pretty excited. Yep, it should be great.
You'll love it out there. What's the cost for a camp for you?
Our cost breaks down to about a little over $20,000 if you took in all of the cost per camp. What we do, though, a lot of the things are donated in kind. We usually partner, like the Toledo camp as example, North Cape Yacht Club. We're partnering with them. They're providing us with boats. They're providing us with classroom. They're providing us with 3 instructors. They also have an immense volunteer team that's been really helpful, making sure that we're getting out in the community and getting the word out. There's been a number of people that we're able to partner with there. So when we go to these clubs, a lot of the cost is sort of offset by donations that way. And then we fundraise in each town as well. We have partners. Since you and I last talked, Harkin has come on board as a national partner. We have some people across the country that have been pretty helpful in making sure that we can provide our camps. But usually most of our fundraising comes from local organizations right there where we bring the camp to.
Okay, let me ask you a better question. If I want to register for Park City, what would it cost me as a parent?
Zero.
Okay, that's it.
We've never charged a child to attend a camp. So all of our camps are free. If you go on our site, there's a registration. You just click it. You can register. Obviously, we have more kids interested than we have spots, so we have a lottery. But then you'll get notified if your child was selected, and then you can attend the camp free of charge. Of course, our camps aren't really free, and anyone can go on the site and donate there as well. Or if there's someone out there that wants to partner with us, in a different capacity, more than welcome to chat with anyone that is interested in that.
And your website name is right under your name here, so if somebody wants to check that out, that's a pretty cool deal.
Yep.
How much time? Just as a personal question to you, this has become in 2 years. I got to think it's got to be more than an avocation.
Yes.
It's not a vocation, but it's certainly with 2, 4, 6, with 8 camps.
Yep.
How much time do you put into this?
I mean, so I left my full-time role, a corporate role, about 5 years ago because of some childcare issues and making sure that my kids were taken care of. This has become essentially my full-time job. I'm currently in an unpaid role as an executive director, but this is what I do pretty much. It's full-time.
Okay. Well, listen, we look forward to hopefully catching up with you in Holland. We're going to be in Holland and on that side of the state that weekend. So maybe we can come over.
Yeah, I'd love to have you out. That'd be great.
Check it out and talk to some of the kids and
sure,
so get a firsthand view of what goes on. So
yeah,
best of luck. And Scott, as always, I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Greg.
If you have a child who's autistic, certainly look up Spectrum Sailing because I think Scott Herman's program can help. We thank him for kind of bringing us up to date and giving us an update on the program and all that it means to the kids that have autism, and certainly a number of stops here in the Midwest. So that'll be a good program for everybody. We've got some really good interviews coming up. We're going to talk hopefully with some of the guys from the America Magic program. I think we're going to talk with the Campbells next week, in the next couple of weeks, and we've got some other interviews lined up. Sail GP is coming up right around the corner, June 16th in Chicago. We'll be there, and we're going to pick up a few other interviews along the way, and hopefully we're going to do some things that are a bit different this year. We're going to do a little less Zoom, a little more live action, and we'll see how that goes. But we're going to start coming to you on a regular basis on Tuesdays. So for the next 12 weeks, pay attention and hopefully enjoy what we're bringing you. And we hope to be at some of those great finishes for the Chicago the Mac, the Trans-Superior, and a number of other races that take place over the summer. So we're almost there. Memorial Day is only a few days away. We look forward to seeing everybody on the water. And for all the guys in back, we appreciate you coming aboard Inside Great Lakes Sailing. See you next week.